Let's talk about power. The uncertainty is in the air in the power sector as government is yet to reach an agreement with independent power producers over restructuring debts to the tune of some $1.4 billion. Government says that it is working around the clock to get independent power producers to agree its offer. And of course, undertaking energy sector reforms is a crucial part of the $3 billion support program government secured from the International Monetary Fund. Measures to be implemented include some regular adjustment of the tariffs as well. Minister for State and the Finance Ministry, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, says these are crucial measures necessary to ensure stability within the power sector.
I mean, the power sector, as I indicated earlier, is our Achilles heels. It's a very important sector for our economy. Without power, there's no economy. Okay, and so some have described electricity as the fuel for the engine of the economy. It's the fuel for the engine. You have the engine, but the fuel, without fuel, the engine cannot run. And so the power sector is so critical that we must ensure that power is available, and not just available, but power supply is reliable, so that industry can function. But the finances in the power sector continues to be a challenge for us. We have a shortfall of about $1.4 billion now in the sector, which means that a number of measures have to be taken to reduce the shortfall. And this is why the government brought in the Energy Sector Recovery Program, which has led to the implementation of a number of measures, as a result of which the shortfall, which before was about $4 billion, has reduced to the $1.4 billion that we have. We have done this whilst keeping the lights on. You know, that is very significant. Whilst keeping the lights on, we have reduced the shortfall.
Nowadays,
you know, but
some pockets of them.
Yeah, but those are isolated issues
they are
that
not
you
issues about financing.
No, I mean, no, until you get to that uninterruptible stage, which as a country we haven't gotten to. You will still have those isolated operational issues, but largely we have kept the lights on. We never going back to the doom so that we experienced in the past. But having said this, we need to still be very serious about organizing the finances very well to ensure that the energy sector is financially viable. And that means that cost recovery tariffs is important. We must achieve cost recovery tariffs. It doesn't make sense to generate power at 10 cents and then you sell it at 8 cents. Who finances the 2 cents? You know, and so ECG also has to be looked at. I mean, fortunately, we have an MD who is a very serious MD. He was demonstrated that he's up to the task, who has embarked on operations to collect their debts, and they've collected, I understand, about 3.1 billion Ghana cedis. We want to support them to continue to put fire in their operation so that they can recover, because at the end of it all, tariffs are adjusted and yet they are not able to collect, what means that we are being counterproductive. And so we want to be able to do this. Now, you know that there is the cash waterfall mechanism, which has also helped in ensuring that you have cash flow. There were times some IPPs were not paid over a long period of time. There were times ECG could decide which IPP to pay and which one not to pay. You know, so we brought in the cash waterfall mechanism, which has solved that problem, because they all now have some cash flow any time the cash waterfall is to disburse. And so all those partners along the value chain, they get what is due them. The fuel suppliers are getting what is due them. The IPPs who are generating power are also getting, although they don't get the entire money due them. They continue to have what will enable them operate their plants and to stay in business. Now the minister has engaged the IPPs and put an offer to them for the restructuring of their debts in line with the general debt restructuring that we are doing. And a number of them have positively responded to our offer. Some have asked for some modification in their power purchase agreements, and so ECG is engaging them on the restructuring of the power purchase agreements, and we should ensure that at the end of this negotiation the debt levels are reduced, so that we can keep current on our invoices. I must also state that the energy sector is a component of the IMF program, but also of the World Bank DPOs. We are not required to accumulate new tariffs in the sector or in other MGA. We are not required. And so to be able to fulfill this condition, it means that we must be able to reduce our debt size in the energy sector. We also must ensure that the restructured debts are paid, but we also must keep current on future invoices that are coming. These are the measures that we have to put in place to ensure that the energy sector is not financially overburdened. It becomes financially viable so that we can continue to keep the lights on, and then also to ensure that the supply of electricity is reliable.
And the minister is also hopeful that government will reach a deal with the independent power producers to agree to a debt in excess of $1 billion cedis. You may recall that independent power producers had served notice of shutting down plants if government fails to honor its obligations. Elikplim Kobla Apetokbo is head of the Independent Power Producers Chamber.
Have some of our members who have already defaulted on their debt servicing. Others are also defaulting by the next month. And if action is not taken, we'll run into some difficulties. You know, our sources of funds are from the equity markets and the private markets, for which we cannot give any excuse for not able to make repayment when due. Otherwise, when we are constrained, we don't have an option than to pull out the plugs.
All of these will hinge on revenue mobilization, and the Electricity Company of Ghana says they've been working hard on that. Managing Director Samuel Dubik Mahama has been speaking exclusively to my colleague Kojo Yankson.
I remember the first revenue mobilization exercise ECG did not so long ago. Well, a new one is about to start, but there's something different about it. So we sat for a couple of moments with the MD of ECG, Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama, to find out what that one thing is.
So, Joe, today is the 29th of May. Actually, revenue mobilization is going on. You can tell from how quiet the whole place is. Everybody is out, and we are mobilizing for our monies that are out there. Through the first exercise, we established what was missing, especially in terms of the individuals who were not paying. We have actually built up a number of bills, and we've seen what is out there. And currently, as we speak, private homes, the bill out there that we've built is about 2.1 billion that we are going to try to recoup. So what we are trying to do on this exercise is also to introduce the flat rate program. So for all those who've applied for meters, who have not gotten their meters yet, who have enjoyed power, we are going to try and put all of them on a flat rate. I know we've had conversations about why are we not prosecuting. To the conversations, I saw something that kept on coming down the line, which pointed out to us that, you know, we are partly to be blamed for the predicament. And in so doing, it's going to be very difficult to send someone to prosecute them for power theft. So I wanted us to consider this period as an amnesty period. Anybody consuming power without a meter, make sure the ECG teams out there register you and put you on a flat rate. The flat rate, under the PRC law, we cannot recover beyond a year of what you've consumed. But in truth, we don't know how much you've been consuming, so we want to give you a flat rate and prorate it 6 months as a form of also a nice, fair gesture to you. So we have done our calculations per kilowatt hour, and we'll be rolling out. During this week, during the revenue mobilization exercise, some people would be put on the flat rate, and then we'll see how it rolls out. But there's going to be a bigger one, which will come out with the flagship program and how it's going to be, where we roll out there. Anybody with a faulty meter, even though the meter manufacturers are trying to close the gap, we still cannot let you consume at zero. The zero is a major loss to the company and a major loss to the country as a whole. So we want to bridge that gap by putting you on a flat rate. The teams will be able to register you with your phone number, your account details will be given to you, your Ghana card, or any reputable ID that you have. Then from there, your text messages will start coming to you. You'll be reminded constantly of how you should pay for your what do you call it, your power, and then make sure that we are on point at every given point in time by sending out people to speak to you, or also using the digital space to remind you to pay for your power. The truth of the matter is, we know the fight that is going on. The conversation is about how soon we can get people to understand that at the end of every month, or at the beginning of every month, you should pay for the power you have consumed or the power you're about to consume. Because we feel it's not fair to the average Ghanaian who's on a prepaid meter, who has to pay before he consumes. Yet there are other people that are paying that are not consuming. So that's the new style. But this week, during the revenue mobilization exercise, there will be some people that will be captured and put on a flat rate. We are
using the app to do that?
So we have not the main app, but we have a staff portal that we've granted access to every staff to capture people to that effect. So they'll capture you, they'll take you through your paces, and then put you on the rate that you're supposed to be. It's calculated solely based on kilowatt hours. Right. And then you start paying that until your meter finally gets to you. Some people are going to talk about, oh, what if it is more, what if it is less? Until we get to that bridge, we cannot let you consume at zero. So we carefully selected. We have urban, peri-urban, rural, and all of that to fit what the PURC has allocated to us in terms of the reckoner, so we can go forward. And so based on that, that's how we did the calculations to go out there. The whole idea is that everybody consuming electricity should start paying, and should start paying something. At least there are other people that also complain about their meters that are overbilling them. These are all steps to make sure that we can change all of these meters, because meters that are above a certain age are no longer reliable. So a meter is 10 years and above can no longer be reliable. So we have to go out there vigorously and change all of these things. And we have to increase revenue to be able to support these exercises, pay the IPPs and pay all the people in the food chain. So this 1 week exercise, and as much as it's driven at raking the revenue, the main aim also on the other side is to make sure that every customer out there is captured, and to make sure we capture enough. Per the statistics report on the last census that was done, it says there are 8.5 million households in Ghana. When we took the map and mapped out the ECG zone, we realized that it's supposed to be about 6.5 million 6.5 million households within the enclave of ECG. Now, what we've also identified is that on our records, we have records of about 4.5 million. So clearly there's a huge gap that needs to be closed. And let's not forget that when they said households, they didn't talk about commercial entities. So we need to find a way to
put 4.5 million includes
commercial entities and households. So we need to work very hard and close that gap. By this means, I'd like to just ask the people of Ghana to be patient with us. They should grant us access. They should speak with us. Let's talk everything over and let's fix it. But as for consuming electricity at zero, it is not possible. You definitely have to pay. If you don't have a meter, you'll be put on a flat rate. We need to close the gap so that we can be apples to apples at every point in time and pay all our outstanding bills.
And of course, be sure to watch playback of that interview on all of our digital platforms. But for now, it's time to expand the conversation. Joining us via Zoom is Adam Yakubu, who's with the Institute for Energy Security. Also with us in studio is Isaac Ofieje, data analyst here at Joy News. Isaac, let's start off with the disparities even in the figures released by the ECG about coverage and those who are entirely on the meter systems.
So if you have household unit of about 8.2 million and ECG is having data on just 4 point something, the deficit is around 2 million housing units. And just like he said, we are not even talking about commercial entities or institutions. We are just talking about households. So it means that the 4 point whatever million data that ECG is having, their coverage is on both households and other commercial units or institutions. So if you look at the data, there's a huge difference, and if they don't close this gap, and it simply means that we're going to start piling up.
And in fact, all of this is connecting to the bigger picture about the International Monetary Fund conditionalities. We'll delve deeper into that shortly. But I want to hear from you, Adam Yakubu, because you're beginning to see the ripple effects on the energy sector, the IPPs, APNAMs. Now there is a possible restructuring going on, and many are wondering what the direct impacts will be on power supply. At least for us as consumers, that's our ultimate aim. What do you project from the IES perspective?
Good afternoon to your listeners. It is sometimes heartbreaking to hear some of the issues the IPPs have tabled before government, because over the years, these debts have been piled up not just overnight, it is a consistent period. And so one would have wondered, why have we waited to get to this point, right? You know, the government failed to get the IPPs to subscribe to the first round of debt restructuring. And the second round is what has been put forth before the IMF, that they would get the debts to come down. Even when at that level, the IPP still took an entrenched position that their debt is not restructurable, given that most of these debts the government owes them are also debts they also owe to commercial banks that finance their operations and their activities. So if government is going to restructure it, it's not just a matter of dealing with them as institutions, but rather dealing with them as institutions that also have other commitments with other agencies and other companies as well. So they took that entrenched position. But we should look at the considerable efforts that have been made over the years. We have ESLA. How much have we made through ESLA? How much have we paid? I remember some time ago, the Ghana Gas Accountants Association came up with an initiative of auditing the losses and the debts that have been raised by the IPP, so that there are instances where there's differentials. Government could make some savings, but because of our inefficiencies and all that, all these are accumulated as debt. And so when you read the IMF document that has been presented that the government has brought out, you would realize that they said there's going to be an audit of the IPPs that are available and their activities to be able to really determine how much does the government owe the IPPs. I think this is one of the bold steps that, when taken, would go a long way to give us a clearer picture beyond just knowing how much we owe. Then we should be able to tell exactly, do we really owe that? There are some instances, well, when you do an audit, you could have some cost savings. And so government should really take that initiative strongly. But all of this falls back to the collection of the revenue. And let's not shy away to commend the ECG's boss, who has taken it up. The revenue mobilization effort is good, but you can still see clearly some of the challenges the institution is facing. The disparity between the number of households that they have their data against what they do not have is so huge. And you can imagine this is all money, and the monies that are used to generate this electricity have to be paid back.
Is it far-fetched if we go back to the argument about not just auditing how much we owe, but trying to take a second look at the power purchase agreements itself? I mean, the individual ones we've signed with all of these power producers. It's come up again, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this.
Yes. Well, I hold a very strong view on the agreements, power purchase agreements, especially the clauses take for pay. You know, when you are signing on to these agreements, that particular clause is what accounts for most of the debt we are seeing. The IPPs generate the power, whether you use it or not. The agreement is that you are supposed to pay for a percentage of it, sometimes up to 60 or 80%. And we are developing countries, and we have to be given some flexibility that, well, this power you have produced, if we do not use it, we can't pay for it. But the clauses, that particular clause is where all IPP debt is hinged around, take or pay. And up to now, nobody has been able to come out with a clear way we can get that particular clause. So, well, it's true that government should relook at the negotiated agreements. Which of them do we still need? How many of them can we at least pay off then we round up those agreements and let the IPPs off our books. Other than that, insofar as they are still in agreement with the nation and with the government, whatever power they generate in the name of Ghana, we have to pay.
Is there an alternative aside having the IPPs in the equation? Because right now they seem to be the biggest headache of the country right now. But if you take them out of the equation, do we have an alternative? Say, maybe looking elsewhere, probably at another line of supply, probably from the grid company, from ECG itself, or trying to find an alternative beyond the IPPs?
So what the alternative we would have expected that Ghana would be exploring as of now is the renewable energy alternative. We have the potential and we have the resources that can grow our renewable component in the energy mix. But you realize that up to now, our renewable component is just a little over 1% or even 1%. Let's zero it down. If you look at the last PURC release on power adjustments, IPPs or the thermal plants are taking up to almost 70%, with our hydro just doing about 30 or so percent. That should tell you how much the IPPs contribute to our energy generation. So for now, you cannot take them out, but you can, they are institutions, so you can engage them well, get a better deal, right? And when you get the better deal, you can bring down the debt. But for now, if we take the IPPs out of the equation as in the generation of our energy, then I'm sorry, we would be in a very serious situation.
Government has made the argument in the past, and I recall that was a big political debate between the NDC and the NPP at the time, that take-up pay not favorable to the nation. In fact, the generational capacity was way above what we needed at the time as a nation. Even in growing demand, we still have excess capacity. And that's why I'm asking the question as to whether or not we can take the IPPs out and find an alternative.
Yeah, so maybe what I would want us to do is to reduce the numbers. How many of them do we have? How many have we subscribed? But the interesting thing is the ECG just signed on to another agreement just recently.
Interesting.
Yes, the ECG just signed, supervised by the Ministry of Energy. They signed an agreement with Aka Energy and there's a clause in there about 60% take or pay. And so you can imagine at this time we are complaining, we still have the agreements coming in. Yes, but like I said, we can look at our projected demand in the next 5-10 years. How many of these IPPs can we keep to meet that projected demand? And how many of them can we let go? Because if we can let them go, letting them go to comes at a cost. So sometimes that is another challenge the government is looking at. How much you need to pay them off so that you can be free, and how much does it cost you to keep them to be paying the generation charges that they give you at the end of every generation period. So that is where we have to do serious analysis to get a clear picture in the next 10, 20, 15 years. How many of these IPPs do we need to meet our projected demand? When we get that clear picture, I think that we can let some of the IPPs go and we free our books to be able to, because they have clearly stated they won't negotiate their debt.
Until then, we wait to see what then happens. Adam Yakubu, thank you. He's with the Institute for Energy Security. And of course, this